Well, there's no place like Haiti. I mean, parts of Africa that I've been to have reminded me of Haiti, but I think some of it is more visual, shops and small stores and people selling stuff in the street and things like that. And actually, there are other Caribbean countries from Jamaica, and Honduras, and you'll find similar kinds of, economies, street economies. But Haiti, the perpetual drama and helplessness that the average person feels here, it's hard to find a place like that anywhere in the world. It's certainly not in the Western Hemisphere. I mean, I think Haiti is considered the second or third poorest country in the world, something like that, but it's the poorest on this side of the world. And so if you're going to do most of your travel here, you're going to see a poverty. And you saw it out in Port-au-Prince, but this is where the rich people live,
right?
Okay, relative to the rest of it. I've been out to Okai and Miragwan and Jeremy and all the areas around it. And all you got to do is, first of all, the landing strips in some of these, but the airports, they're just a strip of grass, and that's where you put your plane down. And then you get in a car and you start to travel around, and you realize that there are people living here all the time with no electricity and no running water and no toilets and nothing that we would consider the basics of life. What we consider poverty in America is middle class here.
Well, like a basic human right that people refer to, like at least access to those things. And
access very difficult, to food, to water, to medical care. I can't tell you how many kids outside these walls are here because their parents died because there wasn't medical care. Simple medical care. Chika, who we have a whole story with, her mother died because she gave birth to a baby brother who's here with us now, and died in the bed. And I'm sure it wasn't anything that couldn't have been taken care of if she was in a hospital, but she gave birth at home and there's no doctor. So that kind of poverty, that kind of hopelessness, that kind of relentless pessimism of there being anything changing. We're sitting here right now as we're recording this, there's no government. There's no government. There's 11 people in the government and an acting prime minister who is being accused of murdering the president, and gangs are running the streets and nobody knows when it's going to get better. So it's that backdrop that's right outside these walls that you always have to kind of keep.
I want to underscore the palpability of what you're saying because the orphanage, like many properties, has barbed wire around it to keep you from scaling the wall and coming in. But one of the marked visual sort of tensions I felt was that now there's armed security 24/7 inside the gates of this orphanage. Yeah. And you often see guns and shotguns out in the street. And that wasn't quite like that 9 years ago.
No.
So
we had a guy who sat in a chair.
Yeah, what was his
inside,
name?
Mr. Germain.
Mr. Germain.
Yeah. He just sat in a chair.
In the shade.
We inherited him, and he was considered the security guard. And I kept thinking, does he even have a weapon? And he sat in the shade, and we didn't have the heart to fire him, so he just kind of sat there. But now it's gotten to the point that not only do you have armed security, but you don't even let your armed security stand outside for fear of their guns being taken away by a passing gang member who sees a guy with a gun and says, oh, let me take that gun. So they have guns and they stay inside because they don't want anybody to see their guns. I mean, think about that, okay, you're just bracing for someone to come over your walls. And the fact is, last year now, an orphanage was attacked not far from here. And they came over the walls and they killed the security guard and they maimed the director and they raped 3 of the teenage girls. And it's not as if you get to say, well, we're a charity or we're an orphanage, so they won't touch us. Yes, they will. We all witnessed, the whole world witnessed the capturing of all those volunteers, missionaries who would come down to work at an orphanage, and so orphanages are not sacrosanct. And believe me when I tell you that that's the biggest motivation behind this massive move that we're making here is safety. Facilities, yes, and improvement, yes, and green trees and all that, but it's first about we need to be safe. We hear gunshots going off here all the time. The other day, I got a photo from, I could show it to you, it's on my iPhone, from Yanel, our director, and he wrote, "Look what landed on our picnic table." And he showed me a bullet, and just so happened a guy was, one of our I think our cook or Petit Papa, was sitting at a picnic table and the thing just plopped down. Somebody fired a gun out in the street or whatever. And
Mark and I have heard gunshots fairly close, you know, I mean, it's
a daily occurrence.
Yeah.
The Full Exposure Podcast is brought to you by Dr. Peter Hahn and University of Michigan Health West, in appreciation of the creative and artistic visionaries who enrich our lives through cultural connections.